Picture this. It's 2 a.m. You're exhausted. You know you've got work in the morning. Your body is begging you for sleep, but you can't quite tear your eyes away from the screen that's in front of you. This is what we call revenge bedtime procrastination. And if you have ADHD, autism, or a highly demanding work life, it's something you're very likely to struggle with at some stage in your life. Not because you don't care, and not because you're lazy, but because you aren't feeling in control of your time. Welcome or welcome back to Unwinding Minds. I'm Rosie, hi. I'm a disabled UK-based counsellor who specialises in supporting disabled, neurodiverse and chronically ill people with managing their mental health. Alongside private practice in counselling, I make these videos to support those who are struggling with managing their mental health. These videos are here to offer psychoeducation and support, especially for those who can't access counselling right now, but they aren't a replacement for professional therapy. So let's start by defining what problem we're talking about today. RBP, Revenge Bedtime Procrastination. It is best described or understood as the intentional postponement of sleep, despite having the opportunity to rest. Typically, it's as a way of reclaiming personal time that felt unavailable to you throughout the day. Unlike insomnia, where people struggle to initiate or maintain sleep, those experiencing RBP are able to sleep, but they choose not to. From a clinical perspective, this distinction is important. It situates RBP not as a disorder of sleep itself, but as a difficulty in self-regulation, often rooted in unmet psychological needs. It often begins in a rather familiar way. You find yourself staying up late, kind of aware that you're tired, perhaps very tired, but you're unable to quite bring the day to a close. There's a bit of resistance to turning off the light or powering down your games console, as though doing so would mean surrendering the only part of your day that's felt even remotely yours. I want to say from the outset that this is something I see and hear about very often in my work, especially in people with ADHD and autism, or other people with high demand work, such as those who are in high-powered careers, or university students. I want to be very clear that it isn't a failure of discipline, nor a lack of willpower. Rather, it's a very human response to a day that might have asked quite a lot of you and offered very little in return. In that sense, what we call RBP is not irrational at all. It's in fact a very, very understandable kind of pattern that emerges when we think of it as a control problem, not as a discipline problem. What tends to underpin this pattern of RBP is a day that's characterized by high demands, limited autonomy, and insufficient opportunity for resting time, restorative me time, or relaxation time, however you want to term it. And over time, this can give a rise to a sense of deprivation, of not having had the space to simply exist, unwind, or feel in control of what you do throughout your day. In response, the evening becomes something of a refuge. Individuals may engage in low-effort, immediately rewarding activities, scrolling through social media, video games, watching the TV or videos, or messaging, and not out of carelessness with their time, but as an attempt to restore a sense of agency and emotional relief, and to seek out dopamine in a way that minimizes the effort and maximizes the results. There is, of course, a subtle and rather poignant paradox at play. Many people understandably frame this behavior as a form of self-care, as a small act of kindness towards oneself after a demanding day. Yet the research suggests that this may reflect a misinterpretation of self-love. While the intention is to soothe and reward oneself, the outcome often undermines the very well-being that one is trying to protect. So in this sense, RBP can be seen as compensatory. It's a coping strategy, one that offers short-term comfort, but perhaps some longer-term costs as well. Now, am I saying that playing video games or scrolling through social media should not be allowed? No, absolutely and obviously not. The key issue is not around whether you should do one of those things or not, if they're enjoyable. It's around how active the choices you're making are to engage with those things. It's good to have hobbies and things that you enjoy doing to relax. But what we want to be careful of is the degree. Are you getting different kinds of rest? Are you interacting with the people around you? Is it interfering with your quality of life? Are you experiencing signs of sleep deprivation? Is there balance in what you are doing? A few nights of revenge bedtime procrastination is one thing, right? But if it's a regular occurrence, it can have a huge impact on you in the long term. Persistent engagement in RBP is associated with, unfortunately, a range of adverse outcomes. So that includes sleep quality being reduced, impaired cognitive functioning, and diminished overall well-being, just to name a few. Disturbances to your sleep routine can really impact your long-term health. And most of the clients I speak with report being fully aware of the need for rest, yet finding themselves unable to disengage from late-night activities. There's a tension here between intention and action. Highlights the result of self-regulatory fatigue, particularly in those who are already managing stress or cognitive load throughout the day. To explain what that is, because that might not make sense to you, self-regulatory fatigue refers to a temporary reduction in one's capacity to manage your thoughts, emotions, and behaviours in line with your long-term goals, and that's typically following prolonged periods of mental or emotional effort. In simpler terms, it's what happens when the mind becomes tired from sustained self-control. Throughout the day, we are constantly regulating ourselves, focusing attention, suppressing impulses, meeting demands, making decisions, taking action. Over time, this effort can deplete our energy, and by the evening, one's ability to make adaptive choices, such as going to bed at an appropriate time, may be significantly diminished. What can appear on the surface as avoidance or a lack of discipline is often better understood as quite a natural consequence of cognitive and emotional exhaustion. Encouragingly, interventions grounded in self-compassion appear to offer meaningful support. The research indicates this, that self-love therapy, which integrates elements of cognitive behavioral therapies and reflection, can significantly reduce RBP behaviors. This approach invites individuals to develop a more attuned understanding of their needs, to gently challenge unhelpful beliefs, and to cultivate forms of rest and pleasure that do not come at the expense of their health. Following such interventions, participants demonstrate improved sleep routines, reduced bedtime delay, and a greater ease into transitioning into rest in some studies. From a therapeutic standpoint, it may be helpful to view RBP not as a failure of discipline, as I said, but as a signal. It's a sign that something essential has been missing during the day. When we approach it with curiosity rather than criticism, it becomes an opportunity to ask, what did I not receive today that I'm trying to reclaim tonight? In addressing that question with care and honesty, we can begin to build a more sustainable and compassionate relationship with both time and with rest as concepts. I often talk to neurodivergent clients about this in the context of figuring out which things they have assumed they need to remain constant responsibilities and the amount of space that those things take up. So there are those things in life that need to remain ongoing tasks, like eating meals as an example. But often the concept of what it means to do these things correctly hasn't been looked at very closely, and therefore also isn't dynamic. So let me give you an example of this in practice to make it less abstract. Let's say you're a person who chops up the vegetables for your meals, cooks a fresh dinner every night, and doesn't eat leftovers the next day. You repeat this cycle with the assumption that this is what it is to have food every day. Except that isn't the only option for how to navigate eating. Calorie-controlled, pre-prepared meals exist that can go in the microwave. They're done in a couple of minutes. They offer you a convenient meal that doesn't require A, mental energy to think about what you're going to eat and plan through that, and B, physical energy in terms of the actual preparation. Having an adaptive strategy based on the levels of stress you're currently experiencing makes the most sense. You might be able to make a beef Wellington for your dinner one night, right? And on another, you might have experienced stresses which make a microwaved meal or a pre-prepared salad or something similar a more realistic and sustainable energy choice. The benefit of examining the behaviours we've gotten used to is that we can see where we are overfilling ourselves in terms of our expectations and where we're perhaps not providing ourselves with enough rest or recovery time. I think the most crucial part of navigating RBP is the sense of guilt and shame around a perceived lack of ability to control your time well. And it's a funny thing because RBP is almost always suffered by people who are overwhelmed with a need to do that in their daytime, and that's why they're reaching for more of a feeling of control in their own time in the nighttime. Counselling can be really useful for understanding what's driving the behaviour more deeply. We've talked about a couple of generic examples here today, but it's likely to apply really differently in your life because you have specific circumstances that might motivate this behaviour more or less. Counselling can help you to form more compassion towards this behaviour, hopefully destigmatising what's happening to you, whilst also actually finding ways for you to start addressing it. You deserve to have a listening ear to hear you if you're really struggling to find your way through it and it's impacting on your health and your quality of life and well-being. I hear from clients all the time just how frustrating it is to feel stuck in a loop of doom scrolling instead of sleeping, and wanting desperately to be able to put the phone or the controller down. It's a very real problem, and thankfully it's not one that you absolutely have to tackle on your own. If you've made it this far, please know that I'm very grateful to you. If this episode has resonated with you, please take a second to like it, to subscribe, or to share it with someone else who you think might benefit from hearing this message today. You never know, you might make a big difference in their life as well. We make a lot of videos on this channel about chronic illness, disability, neurodivergence, and mental health. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, subscribe. And I'm always really interested to see what people want to see more of, so if you have thoughts about that, please put them down in the comments section below. And do check the description if you're interested in working with me on a one-to-one basis, as I do also offer private counselling. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. Please take care.